Are you going to the ugly sweater thing?
We're live on Facebook, Bobby.
Okay, we go. Hi,
Now,
everybody.
if I go to the ugly contest, sweater contest, how does that work?
That's with Minnesota Normal.
Oh,
I just got an invite from Michael Ford.
I'm gonna see if I got an ugly sweater.
Don't forget my Facebook is going live. Just so you know. Your meeting is now being broadcast on my Facebook.
Wow. How does technology work? Is that technology inside technology inside technology?
Right? Technology inside the technology.
Sometimes I wonder what planet are we on anymore? And do we still have to eat? Because I remember last time we get this pill, they can take us all day long. We don't need no food.
That's Divine, and that's by the artist Mike. MMYYKK, and I love that song. Maybe because on the video I see so many people that I love and care about hanging out and walking around, including Michael himself. So if you haven't checked out the video, just go on to YouTube and type in Divine by Mike, and that's MMYYKK, and you can have it too in your playlist. So we're in the studio with Mr. Dennis Anderson and technology inside the technology. Also, Bobby is on Dennis's computer, and so you might hear Bobby in the background. I'm not sure if he'll show through or not, but we're in the studio with Mr. Anderson talking about the gala, which is POC Pride's next event, and it's coming up on December 18th. Tell everybody what they need to know about the gala, Dennis.
This is our freshman event for the first time, a gala to raise money for POC Pride. I know other nonprofits do this every year, try to have an annual event. They raise most of the money to do budgeting around to make sure they exist throughout the year. You know, coming off of COVID, you know, and looking at things in the future, we want to be around to make sure that POC Pride exists, it flourishes, and move forward. So this is our attempt to bring to you a POC event that will make, I guess, the end of the year special for us, because we want our community to understand that we value them, right? What they do, and we want to be around for them when we continue what we do in the future, and that takes money. So our annual gala event, we decided that we wanted to raise $25,000 or more if we possibly could. You know, that was our goal. But I mean, it doesn't matter if it's either good or not. We're going to throw our gala because we want people to know that POC and people color is here to stay.
Since this is public radio, we can't really talk specifics around dollars and cents, but I can say this. If you're an individual, you should have $1.25. If you are an organization, you can come in for a nice a oneer. Like a 1K, and you can have your table and have your community members or your employees or whatever. All 8 of you can sit around the table and enjoy the evening. Folks are going to get food. What's on the menu?
At this point, you get to choose your menu. You know, from vegan to, I mean, we got the normal yard bird, they call it. We got the normal beef ribs. I mean, it's up to you to decide. You know, right now, it's a choice of the menu that you for your dinner that particular night. With the entertainment, you know, giveaways, silent auctions. We plan to give everybody one of our new POC face masks for COVID-19 purposes. You know, you can cover up. Testing, you know, maybe get the booster shot while you're there. It's what I'm trying to do is this. We need people to show up, not just once a year, but to show up to make sure that POC organizations like this one can flourish and exist. You know, so this takes dollars. I know that. You know, we have to understand that. We also want to give back to our community some kind of way for the things that they do also, and then do it in a nice way. Since the COVID-19, we're trying to find a way to give back, also raise needed dollars to continue with the organization. We are a 501(c) organization, so you know how that thing works.
Yes, yes. It takes a lot of money to run an organization, and it takes a lot of money to do amazing events. And POC Pride is known for the amazing events that we've thrown over the years. And so with the goal of $25,000 raised through this event, it gives us an opportunity to wind down the year, to dress up. You can book a hotel room for the evening so you and your buddies or you and your sweetie can have a special night and not worry about driving home. There's going to be cash bar, there's going to be good food. There might even be appearances by Santa Claus or other mythical creatures and features. There'll be a place for organizations to table. So if you're an organization or an entity that wants to network and connect with POC queers, you can pay a fee and do that. But mostly it's an evening for us as queer people of color to come together, hang out, be entertained by our artist, and to leave feeling like we're special.
But I mean, how do we empower ourselves if we don't do it ourselves? It's for and by us. Everything that we're doing here, we're trying to get POC people and our allies to participate in some shape, form, or fashion. We do need allies to support this engagement. This is not something that, you know, is POC specific that you have to ask to come if you're Caucasian. This is not something that, you know, we want to build around, you know, we're trying to build our space. This is a situation where it's open. We need donations. We need to build our resources. We need to be around for the next 5 years. Build a 5-year plan. How do you become a part of what we do? By supporting this whole concept and idea. You know, we love dollars, but we also want your personal support. Saying, how do you show up?
Yes. So if for some reason you cannot be in person on December the 18th, please feel free to make your tax-deductible donation to POC Pride. And moreover, we want butts in the seat. We want to come and hang out with you. We want you to hang out with us. You can get the information about buying tickets and other things on the website. And the website is what, Dennis?
www.POCpride.org.
Very, very simple website to remember. Go onto the website, check it out. There's information on there. You can go onto the Facebook page. If you want to find us on Facebook, it's real easy to find us on Facebook. Just put in MNPOC Pride. It'll probably come up MNPOC Pride Festival. If it does, you're in the right place. There's going to be information there about the gala and how to get there. You can also listen to POC Pride every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on their Facebook Live Wind Down Happy Hour.
Which we're doing right now.
Yeah. So anything else you want folks to know, Dennis?
Yes. I want folks to know this. If you know me and you hear the sound of my voice, clap your hands. No, I learned it in training, but that's what they used to do. But no, seriously, we need support. And I mean, not just beg anything like that, but really saying that this is something that people, for 20 years, we've been around this situation, trying to bring out what it means to people of color, what we want, what we will look for, how we strive. If you want to better that situation in your organization, and make sure that your organization is being equitable in this new community, understanding how to work with POC people, what that really means, how to really get in there. This is an opportunity for you to do that. This is a mega opportunity because we don't represent the whole community, but we are a gateway in. And this is a big gateway because a lot of people in Minnesota are looking for something bigger than what what it's really been. How do we tap into resources? And you tap into this resource as people of color that we've all been looking for, and truly make that exciting and when we move forward. That's what I'm looking for. To engagement, not just standoffish, true engagement. This is 2022.
Yep.
That's what we're moving into. I know we need this. I've reached out to a lot of people in the community personally and asked them my personal stuff, like people that you wouldn't even think of. How can we start to be more equitable in our community? And you really stand up for that in your organization and mine too. And also be transparent because I want to make sure that what we do is transparent.
Mm, 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 mm. I love it. I love it. I'm gonna put in the background a song that one of my buddies, my friend, my co-worker with our record label called Super Queen, mixed and mastered. And I'm just going to leave that on in the background. And as we go out today, I'm going to read a little bit of this book called The Revolution Starts at Home. And The Revolution Starts at Home is confronting intimate violence within activist communities. And so, Dennis was just joking around a little bit with the, if you can hear the sound of my voice, clap once. That is an activist organizer tool that has been used for a long time to kind of, call people into attention. And so as we think about activists and organizers and folks that are doing the work in our community, I thought that I would maybe read from this book called The Revolution Starts at Home, because folks are really liking the pieces that I'm picking to read. And this one I thought was especially important as we kind of move from the month of November, which we recognize trans folks and we make trans folks visible in this month. This piece is called Reclaiming Queer and Trans Safety by Morgan, and it's this first chapter in The Revolution Starts at Home. And so I'm just going to read it out and keep it as it is and move through it. And then maybe that will encourage y'all to go and pick up this book. And I wanted to start this as part of activist stories or abolitionist stories, as I'm going to be calling this segment, to talk really about where do we get the tools for activism and organizing and looking back to those people that came before us. So this chapter starts on October 29, 2009. President Obama signed into law the first ever gender identity and sexual orientation inclusive federal hate crimes bill. Just a few weeks later, 2 young queer people of color were brutally murdered. Jorge Stephen Lopez Mercado in Puerto Rico and Jason Matheson in Baltimore, Maryland. On December 9th, 2009, 2 groups of mostly young transgender and queer people of color gathered in Brooklyn and San Francisco to mark the federal policy and the murders as profound losses. The Audre Lorde Project's Safe Outside the System, or SOS Collective, an LGBTS GNC, gay, lesbian, bisexual, two-spirit, transgender, gender non-conforming, people of color organizing project working to end police and hate violence in central Brooklyn, and Community United Against Violence, a 30-year-old LGBTQ gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning anti-violence organization working to create safety in the San Francisco Bay Area, teamed up. These two organizations across the country teamed up to convey a series of public conversations under the banner Reclaiming Safety, to voice dissent against the idea that more policing, imprisonment, and prosecution will solve the devastating rates of murder and violence in our communities. We gathered out of belief that safety comes through stronger relationships, more healing, increased support, not more prisons or police or longer prison sentences. We did not want the deaths of our communities to be used as a call for more violence. We feared and suspected this would be the case in the deaths of both Mercado and Matheson, who, oops, I lost my place. Whose respective home communities of Puerto Rico and Baltimore were already primary targets of criminalization and prosecution by the U.S. government. On the San Francisco side, Communities United Against Violence launched our first safety lab, a project where people came together to imagine and practice grounded community response to violence that do not rely on the prison industrial complex or its tactics of shame, punishment, and isolation. In this first lab, participants developed creative responses to murder, such as using art to reclaim public space, involving parents of people who had been murdered, engaging in compassionate, direct conversations with people who have been harmed, and creating a rapid response violence prevention network among friends. On the Brooklyn side, SOS convened activists, attorneys, and community members to discuss how victims' rights, rhetoric, and hate crimes legislations have strengthened prison and police systems, and the need for community-based violence approaches, a need for community-based approaches to violence. For Communities United Against Violence, those early December conversations were a culmination of 2.5 years of brewing organizational change, from being in a traditional progressive social service agency towards being a radical membership-based organization, working to transform both incidents of violence and the political, economic, and social conditions that create violence. This journey was made possible by the sustained struggle for the prison industrial complex, abolition, and radical anti-violence organizations, such as the Critical Resistance, Generation 5, and Insight, Women of Color Against Violence, and others, who have worked for more than a decade to reveal the criminalization as an ineffective, false, and violent solution to interpersonal violence, and to emphasize the need for transformative community approaches to harm. Reclaiming Safety was a powerful example of the above ground dissent at a time when many people considered a pro-prison bill to be an LGBT victory, despite the increased capacity and policing it would mean for poor people of color, including poor LGBT people of color. The gathering gave voice to often marginalized and underground effort of those of us who are not represented by the dominant LGBT national and political agenda, particularly queer and trans people of color and poor people from these communities. And now, all too well, the devastating impact set of law and order policies used to address interpersonal violence. Given the escalating US-backed wars and military interventions of Afghanistan and the US Gulf Coast, Haiti, Iraq, and Palestine, and everywhere else being waged in the name of aid and security, the exploding number of people behind bars in the name of safety and justice, and the continued ecological and economic exploitation of our communities in the name of development. The need for alternative visions of safety and sustainability couldn't be more urgent. Reclaiming safety was a small but important step in that long process. Telling stories. How do you tell a story that's still unfolding? How do you tell a story that feels both premature and long overdue? Every day, queer and trans people are terrorized by violence, traumatized by abuse, and betrayed by those meant to protect us. And every day, we survive and tell each other stories of our struggles for love and justice. Stories are so important. They help us have a sense of who we are, of where we come from, and of where we're going. They can also hinder us from doing so. For instance, the story of LGBT safety will come through increased prosecution and criminalization is not a new one. It comes out of a much older story that says implicitly white, middle, aged and owning class. Safety will come when dangerous, implying Black, brown, and poor people are disappeared by death or detention. This is the story that the United States is founded on and has been used by Europeans, imperialists, enslavers, border patrol, law enforcement, prison guards, correctional facilities, corporate executive, political leaders, media conglomerates, religious institution, among others, to justify unthinkable levels of violence from the displacement and physical and cultural genocide of Native people and the enslavement of Blacks. To the exploitation of the working class people and the lockdown of communities of color, poor communities, prisons, jails, and juvenile detention facilities and detention centers. These are the things that we push against. And to seduce marginalized people, such as white people who are Jewish, queer women, and or working class, to complicity with oppression. It is a pervasive story passed down through families, culture, time, institutions, with painful consequences to our ability to create liberating communities and movements. But we have stories of amazing pushback. And folks like people who work through SOS and people who work through Communities Against Violence lay the groundwork for us to move into the future. As we close out today, I'm going to read kind of the last little part of this story, and we'll finish this story up next week, so don't worry. But I wanted to leave you with the last part, so we're not kind of hanging in a place of that doesn't feel so great. So it's important to remember that our movements are still in the early age of building the relationships, the skills, the principles, the practice, and the infrastructure, the capacity really necessary to transform our communities to deal with violence. We still have a long, long way to go to both popularize the notion that our communities will be better off without the police, to build responsible alternatives that will take the state's monopoly on responding to violence and make that obsolete. Because of how deeply we have embodied the police and prison state and how we are with one another and ourselves, we must ask ourselves, how can we ensure our nations our notions of community safety, accountability, and justice are not misused as justifications for shame, exile, or punishment, as they currently are. How can we practice challenging violence without replicating state power, the prison industrial complex, or many other forms of oppression and abuse? How are we working to eliminate these? What are the external accountability? What external accountability do we need to have to cultivate community accountability and to be authentically transformative rather than retributive? In his 1957 sermon, Loving Your Enemies, written while in jail following the Montgomery bus boycott, Martin Luther King spoke to the task ahead of us. We have not come to such an impasse in the modern world that we must love our enemies or else. So I'm just going to close out for the rest of the day, and we'll pick it up next week. And I got interrupted, so it's really hard to finish. Man, I just, oh.